All right, so we're in the middle of that section on page test, section that begins on page test. The line starts with the word re'u. We are identifying a difference between oneg and ratzon. Even as these two aspects are present and reveal themselves through mitzvahs. In mitzvahs there is the primary union ratzon, the command of their mitzvahs. And from that perspective there is not a difference between one mitzvah and another. As the Gemara says, Al Tiyeshu v'Sheki. But then there is also the tainug in mitzvahs. The Torah brings out both in Yonim. The Torah brings out the ratzon, the command, and also Torah brings the oneg sheb'Torah into the mitzvahs. And from that perspective, the tainug, in that perspective, each mitzvah has its particular and peculiar oneg. And there are differences. They're distinct and different. As we said, each mitzvah has its own time. We discussed the principle of time. Okay, now we go further. As I said, at the end of the line that starts with word re'u ki Hashem, that's in the middle of the paragraph. V'chein yesh hefresh. Similarly, there's also a difference b'hachiyuv the esek ha'teira l'chiyuv the kiyum mitzvahs. Between the obligation of learning Torah and the obligation of doing mitzvahs. Because what we have presented, we have said that Torah and mitzvahs represent these two inyanim of oneg and ratzon. And therefore in Torah there are differences, and there are chilukim, there are discalcus, and in mitzvahs there aren't any. And that extends it to the point of the chiyuv, the very requirement, the very obligation of esek ha'teira, engaging in Torah, versus the obligation of performing mitzvahs. The bechiyuv, the esek ha'teira, where in the obligation of engaging in Torah, yesh b'zeh madreges. There are different madreges, different levels. How do we see that? The harei, for behold, hachiyuv hu v'hagisu b'yom v'layla. The primary obligation of learning Torah, of esek ha'Torah, is that you must labor in it day and night. Which means, sheyiyeh esek ha'Torah tomit, that the engaging in Torah must be constant. So constant that even while you are walking the street, whatever it is, there has to be an from Torah. However, zehu liyoshvei ehel. That obligation, that degree of the obligation, that applies to those who are actually dedicated their lives in their lives and involved exclusively in sitting in oyhab, in sitting besmedrash and learning. Avol baalei asokim, but then there is also this section of Yidden Baalei asokim who are engaged in business. Hachiyuv shalahem, their obligation, who perek echad shachris perek echad aris, they satisfied their obligation of learning Torah day and night is by learning one section of one perek in the morning, by day, and perek echad aris in one section in the evening, and that's way they satisfied their basic obligation of day and night. Ma'ashu Amar Azal. But that which the Chazal say, Shiyeteros kva u'malachtecho Ayin. Chazal say that it has to be that your Torah should be kva, should be fundamentally established. And this is, so to speak, a constant. And your work has to be temporary. Ari means by chance, not established. So that seems to be contradicting to what we said. Because if there is malacha, if there is work, then the Torah cannot be kivaya anymore. We're saying that the Torah is kivaya that applies only to Yesh v'Yoyel. But he was saying it applies to all, even those that have work, the malach Cha'ari that do work. This Indian that the Rosh Kivah, malach Cha'ari, even for that group, for that section of Eden, that malach Cha'ari that they have mala asokim, that they have work. Hainu sheyiyeh bechinas kviyus benefesh. That kviyus that the Chazal referred to, that the Torah should be kva, that does not mean keva in time, not constant, because you're going off to work. But it means kviyus benefesh, that this Torah has to be that which is permanently established in your nefesh, in your soul. Which means which means that the ultimate kavanah and the most important part of his kavanah in life should be the engaging in Torah. And therefore, even while he is engaged in masu maton, in business, his intent would be in order that he should profit. And he should be able, this will enable him to engage in Torah. And he should be able to direct his children in learning Torah and to perform mitzvahs. Which means that Torah is really occupying only a small portion of his day. But that the intent, the entire daily, all of his daily occupation has an intent, has an inspiration coming from Torah. This is Torah. But the actual engaging in Torah is not at all throughout the day. It's only a limited amount that is required of the Balei Isaac. Whereas the Talmid Chachamim, Yesh v'Yehel, they have absolutely no exception. It's a constant. Therefore, we see that in Torah, in the mitzvah, in how you perform the Indian from learning Esek Torah, there are differences, distinctions, depending on the person, what his madrege is. V'zehu Basic Torah. But this distinction between one kind of person and another kind of person in performing the obligation is only in Esek HaTorah. But then, when it comes to performing the mitzvahs, there all Yidden are absolutely equal. Well, all of them are obligated in performing the mitzvahs equally. There is not a distinction and difference between the obligation of putting on tefillin of a Bala Esek or a Talmid Chacham. The Gam. One second, I skipped a line. Whereas in Torah they are not all equal. As we pointed out before, the Balei Hasokim, those who engage in business, they don't have the same requirement in Esek HaTorah as the Yesh v'Yehel. וגם בזה יש חילוקי מדרגות. And even within that category of Balei Esek, that we say that their obligation of engaging in Torah is different than the Yesh v'Yehel. Amongst them themselves there are differences. The gam baliyesek hashayochem l'Torah. That also the baliyesek, the business people, hashayochem l'Torah, if they have a shaychus l'Torah, which means that they are learned, tzorich liyes teros chokva b'kviyus b'smal. There has to be by them teros chokva, and a set aspect of Torah in their lives, even b'kviyus b'smal, in terms of set in time. We said before that overall teros chokva umlachta cha'ari, the kva refers to kaveis benefesh, that it is a constant awareness in the nefesh. But there's also a simple principle in Kivos Kva. But there, that depends already what the level of the Baal Esek is. If he's a Shaykh L'Torah, then by him he has to be Kivos Kva, Kivuras B'Kviz B'Smal. He has to have a certain set time when he learns Torah. Umi she'ein Shaykh Be'etzem L'Esek HaTorah. And the one who is not shaykh be'etzem, in essence, he does not have the inyan. He cannot relate to the inyan of Esek HaTorah engaging in Torah. He doesn't have that type of intellectual powers. He doesn't have that type of exposure. The Mekomo came, where he also got, nevertheless, gamhu mechuyev be'Esek HaTorah. He nevertheless is also obligated in Esek HaTorah engaging in Torah. Why? But he is not shaykh to Torah. The answer is because in Torah there are two inyanim. There is the Torah, the oneg, the Torah element, and the mitzvah element. Meshum the mitzvah, the Esek HaTorah, because the mitzvah element of Esek HaTorah, hakol mechuyavim bo. All are obligated for that. Rak sheyoytzim midei chevosim pa'amach perikach Chassidus. Except that they can satisfy their obligation by learning one section in the morning, one section in the evening. But there is no exception as far as saying that somebody does not have the obligation of Torah or learning Torah at all, because there's the mitzvah element of Torah that is uniformly applicable to all. Because the mitzvah is contained hakol mechuyavim rak sheyotzim lichevosim perikach Chassidus. They satisfy their obligation. And by those who have no element of learning, a shachas to learning Torah in the simple sense of the word. So by them, the principle of also kva, hapirush teros kva, the meaning of the words that Chachal say that Torah has to be kva. Should be firmly and constantly present. There it is. B'chinas kviyas b'nefesh. There, the kva refers to kviyas b'nefesh, as we explained before, that it should be well constant, established in the nefesh, that he is constantly having in mind the inyan from Torah. Hare. Thus we see from this discussion we see she'nedei mehachiyu b'Esek HaTorah lachiyu b'kima mitzvos. We see that there's clearly a difference halachically between the obligation of engaging in Torah and the obligation to perform mitzvahs. The obligation of performing mitzvahs does not recognize any difference, distinction between one person and another. In Esek HaTorah, it is fitted according to the person, even though none are exempt totally, because of the mitzvah aspect in Esek HaTorah. B'chol zeh hu b'Torah mitzvahs. this whole discussion and this whole distinction is identifiable in Torah and mitzvahs, and it is clearly demarcated in terms of Torah and mitzvahs. Sheha-Torah hi mibchinas chachma, where the Torah is mibchinas chachma, has the aspect of chachma. Sheyesh bazeh madreges v'chilukim, I guess. In chachma there are madreges and chilukim. Chachma disseminates in every Inyan, in individually and according to its particular fit. The mitzvah is in ratzon ho'elim. The mitzvah, on the other hand, are directly the ratzon ho'elim. They do not become imbued in the world, that it should fit to the worldly contours. It is the ratzon ho'elim, it is the divine will as it is. She'ein bozeh hischalkus madreges, where there are no hischalkus madreges, there are no distinction of different madreges.
What does it mean that someone's not shayach in Esak Ater Ba'atzim?
He doesn't have the intellectual qualities. He doesn't have any background in Torah.
Ba'atzim sounds like it's more than just like, because if everyone's obligated in learning Torah, it sounds like they're shayach.
Yeah, from the mitzvah aspect of Torah. So this is the distinction between Torah and mitzvahs. Beprotius, and then more specifically, hu b'mitzvahs atzmon. Within mitzvahs themselves, there are also these two aspects. Something that is akin to Torah, that represented the union from Chochmah and oneg, and something that is just ratzon. The difference between kavonas and mitzvahs, between the kavanah, the intent, as we said before, the tam of kavanah and mitzvahs, etzem kiyuma mitzvahs, versus the essential performing of mitzvahs mitzad haratzon shebahem, from the perspective of the ratzon that is represented in mitzvahs. Canal. And thus, b'chol mitzvah tzorich li is based kavonas. In every mitzvah there has to be two kavonas, two conscious relations to mitzvahs. When a person performs mitzvahs, there are two distinct ways that he relates to mitzvahs all the time. Aleph, one is b'kavona proti sheba, the specific kavona of that mitzvah, what that mitzvah represents. The Beis, and the other aspect of the mitzvahs, the b'chinas kabbalah seil malchus shomayim, in the aspect of kabbalah seil malchus shomayim, of accepting the yoke and accepting the command from malchus shomayim, from the heavenly reign kingdom, l'kayim ritzeinei u'le'ovdei b'chol minei avidas evet, to perform his will and to serve him in every aspect of Avidas Eved, like an Eved serves his master. When you do the mitzvah exclusively because this is what the Melech has commanded, and you do not have any recognition of its significance. And explains in Tanya.
That's shy to the Qiyum, that's in the Qiyum mitzvahs?
Right. In etzem kima mitzvahs, in mitzvahs there's the Torah aspect of the mitzvah and the ratzon aspect. The chokhmah aspect and the ratzon aspect. V'zehu, and that too is alluded to. Sheberoiv ha-mitzvahs, that in most mitzvahs, the most instances of the Torah tells us about a specific mitzvah, Messiah, but Torah ani Hashem. The Torah, after having presented the mitzvah, he says ani Hashem. I should do the mitzvah because ani Hashem. The lechoira, when it would appear question perplexing. Eine movement, we don't understand mahu yin achoisem dani avai. What is the significance of this seal off? I'm giving the mitzvah ani havai. Ahoinyan hu. The inyan is, however, shezehu beis hoinyonim shebimitzvos. That this is alluding to the two inyonim mitzvahs. The kavonas ha-mitzvahs. With the kavanah of the mitzvahs, zehu k'mei shah-mitzvahs tluyim m'shem havaya. The kavanah and the chokhmah that is represented in mitzvahs, or the Torah Hashem the mitzvahs. This is the mitzvahs, the way the mitzvahs are relating to Shem Havaya. Shem Havaya is the inyan of Elokus that ultimately brings Elokus into the world. Sheyesh mitzvahs hatluyim beis yud. That there are mitzvahs that are related way to the ois yud. Yesh boy beis kei. And then there are mitzvahs that are related to the SK, and so forth. Ve'inyan ani havaya. But then there is a higher inyan of ani havaya. Okay, havaya, this is the Shem havaya. In the Shem means the revelation, and the revelation, there are these four different levels how it devolves from Yud K, Vav K, Chochmah, Bina, and so forth. This is how the mitzvahs come from Shem Havaya. But then there is Ani Havaya. Ani, that does not refer to the Shem. This is Ani means I. The etzem olakus. Ani havaya haina b'chinas atzmos ein soif. This is the atzmos ein soif itself. Shalamayim me'Hashem havaya. That is higher than the name havaya. However, shem mischaber b'shem havaya, and that relates and unites with the Shem havaya. In other words, Shem Havaya is the dissemination of that inyan. And dissemination requires the different madrigas. That it should ultimately descend into world, and world should be able to relate to it. But this is not all that is presented, just that which is acceptable by the world. There is the atzim that is not that is also presented, but cannot be, that is not absorbable, that's not absorbable by the world, not that the world can relate to it. There is in for ani. But the ani is mischaber b'shem havaya. It unites, and ultimately the Shem havaya brings down the ani. The metzad bechinu madrega zu, where from the perspective of this madrega, layesh hischalkus madregas klal. There are no hischalkus madregas. There's no distinction of madregas at all. And that explains why the seal of presenting a mitzvah is ani havaya. And the point in this is that although that in Torah there are different madrigas, v'hainu, this is that in Torah there are different madrigas. This is b'hasoid v'tama mitzvah. This is referring to the soid, to the the deeper aspect of the mitzvah and the reasoning of mitzvah. But still we are instructed that you must not judge amongst mitzvahs of Torah. Why? Because in mitzvahs ultimately there is also the union for ani havaya. The ani, not the shem havaya as it descends and it disseminates all over, but ani, the ani himself. The atzma said in soif meira b'shem havaya. That the atzma in himself also comes through the shem havaya. V'hu bechinas ratzon ha'eliyah shel ha'mayla b'chochma. This is the ratzon ha'eliyah that's above chochma, and it does not get disseminated in different form, different levels. The mitzvah, where from this perspective, lo yesh yilukim madrigas klal, there are no different madrigas at all. All right, we're not going to be able to finish paragraph. So let this be the day. So hopefully we'll meet tonight. Okay. It's a little difficult in the house. We'll go upstairs. People are constantly there.